Secretary of State, welcome to techUK's International Trade Week, which we run in conjunction with your departments.
Thank you, it's a pleasure to be here.
We focus on digital, of course, and delighted to have you here. Thank you for coming. Kemi Badenoch, Secretary of State for International Trade and also President of the Board of Trade.
That's right.
So I know you also retain your ministerial role looking after equalities, which is important, but today if we could focus on trade.
Absolutely.
You know, we see fantastic opportunities for digital trade as part of trade. I know this is a subject dear to your heart because you're one of us, originally working in the software business. So maybe I can start by asking you, as you look at your vision for trade, where do you see digital trade fitting in to that vision and where you see the opportunities for UK in digital?
So it's a great question. We are setting out a brand new sort of strategy for how we do trade. And one of the things that we really want to do is focus on the creativity and innovation that make the UK very special, and also talk about how we are planning for the future. And digital trade is going to be very much at the heart of that. So we want to be a global leader in digital trade. We are a services economy, and so much of services is becoming digitized, and making sure that in all our agreements and dealings with companies, whether we're exporting those services or even the goods trade that is based on a lot of digitized transactions, making sure that all of that works well for the UK. And techUK and your members are going to be vital in helping us to deliver that strategy. So thank you for all that you and your members do.
Well, we're delighted. I mean, our 1,000 members have watched the progress of the trade agreements, and we've been really impressed at the way that one of the big wins for us as an independent trading country has been putting more and more digital content into the trade agreements. And
Absolutely.
You can see that with the agreements with Japan, Australia, New Zealand. And how do you think tech companies should be energized in order to take advantage of this?
In so many ways. What we're trying to do is set companies up to be ready for the future. And liberalization of a lot of digital trade rules is going to be key to make sure that you can work in other countries. So things like data localization agreements, making sure that those countries that are particularly protectionist at this point in time, having free trade agreements where we embed our more liberalized approach in order to help both sides deliver for their services economies in particular. Those are the sorts of things that you and your members should be able to take advantage of. So we really want to create a trading environment where everything is, the opportunities are limitless. That's what we want. That's really what we want to see. And it requires government reducing barriers, but it also means business being able to let us know what it needs in order to keep innovating, keep being creative, keep delivering those services which will deliver economic growth and drive economies around the world and just help global trade in total.
I have to say that the consultation with business has been exemplary.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm part of the Strategic Trade Advisory Group, talking on behalf of digital, and we also interact with the specific digital one. So, it really is good, and we get on a lot of support from your officials in that. So, but more than that, actually, you've also now started to look at agreements which are just about digital, haven't you? I mean,
yes.
The blueprint there perhaps is the Singapore Agreement. Absolutely.
The UK-Singapore Agreement was a first of its kind, really groundbreaking stuff. And it's two high-tech hubs just talking purely about digital. And there's so many areas where we just haven't even begun to break ground in terms of what we can do on agreements. So things like artificial intelligence, undersea cables, fintech. I hadn't even heard of law tech, but that's they're really, really innovative, sort of cutting edge ideas in terms of how we can deliver services. So all of that was in the UK-Singapore agreement. We want to see digitizing of trade documents. Apparently, that's going to cut transaction costs by about 76%, according to the International Chamber of Commerce. So those are the sorts of things that we want people to think about when they hear DIT talking about trade, not just the traditional goods only free trade agreement, there is so much more that's going on. And I'm going to be selling that message up and down the country, and in fact, up and down the world, so that people can see what the future is going to look like.
Excellent. And you've spotted our trick, Secretary of State, where we take other industries and then we cut them down to financial services to fin, or education to ed, and we stick tech on the end. But the serious point which you've made there is that every sector is now a digital sector, and the UK is leading in so much of this. So the opportunities are very large. But you've got an awful lot underway, haven't you? I mean,
so it's a reminder there for me to do something.
Yes. Well, we know you're busy,
Okay.
and it's great that you're here talking to our members. Looking at all of the agreements that you're working on, you and the department.
Yeah.
That's a lot, isn't it? I mean, Canada, Mexico, Israel, the Gulf, India, accession to the CPTPP. I think I got that right.
Yes, CPTPP. It's the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Fantastic. Well done. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did that rather than me. But
CPTPP is easier eventually.
It is eventually. You get it in your head, don't you? But I mean, how can we help you with that? What should we be looking to do? And maybe you want to talk a little bit about investment, because that's also the other side of the coin, isn't it? How do we attract the best and brightest companies to set themselves up in the UK as well?
So I'm picking up where my predecessors have left off in terms of the initial discussions around all these negotiations with the various countries that you mentioned, whether it's Canada, the GCC, Israel, and so on. So me coming into the department, I've seen a lot of work that has been done in terms of framing what the objectives are. So I'm going to be carrying on with those objectives which were set by my predecessor, and I think I have them here. So the things that I would say techUK members should be paying attention to in those negotiations are open digital markets, data free flow with trust, safeguarding workers, consumers, and businesses. So a safe trading environment for business, things like mobile roaming, the security around that, all of that falls into the remit that we're looking at. And then the digital trading systems, cutting the red tape, making it easier, faster, cheaper to trade, and fair and inclusive global governance. Those are the sorts of things which we're trying to help standardize and deliver in terms of our relationships with all of those countries. And you asked about investment. Investment is going to be crucial. So trade is a two-way thing. Yeah. It's not just exports and imports. It's also investment, whether it's us investing in countries and companies outside the UK, but also foreign direct investment coming into the UK. And one of the things I've been doing, it's International Trade Week, one of the things I've been doing is helping to sell the UK as a great place to invest. We've just had the Green Trade and Investment Expo this week, where companies from across the world have come to Gateshead to discuss what the opportunities are, in particular around green trade. Some of that is, it's hardware, it's, carbon capture, undersea storage, it's hydrogen fuel cells, but a lot of it is actually the software that will drive much of the way that we get the data for how we use energy and how to make sure that we can be greener. And a lot of people want to invest in the UK because we are streets ahead of other countries in terms of looking at these sorts of innovations. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that's happening within the investment space as well. It
won't surprise you that we agree with you on that, Secretary of State, that and we've also got that one, green tech, clean tech. We're very focused on that. Yeah. And I do see an awful lot of interest because of the UK's leadership profile. Yeah. Obviously building on last year's COP and a number of announcements that your government's committed to, which give the opportunity, don't they, for people to invest. Yeah. Can I talk a little bit about that biggest trade partner in tech? Obviously, the EU is very important. I know that's not your department's area, but the United States. And obviously, we were very pleased to be involved in the Atlantic trade dialogues, both in the US and here up in Aberdeen. And we're very pleased there's a roadmap that's outlined, and a lot of activity. Is there anything else that you can update us on with respect to building more relationships with the US?
Yes, but I would say on the first point that actually the EU is within our department's remit. We are the International Trade Department.
Everywhere.
Yes, it's everywhere. And we already have a trade and cooperation agreement with the EU.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that that's all that we are doing. So we need to break out of the view that trade agreements are the only thing that DIT does. We do so much more. And one of the things, or rather one of the many things that we do, is trying to reduce barriers to trade. We've done a lot on tariff barriers, but non-tariff barriers are things that we look at. So businesses that export, I know this is less to do with digital trade so much, but we do actually help businesses reduce the friction that they have with countries all over the world, including the EU. On the US specifically, we are in a good place in the sense that we've had those trade dialogues, and what we're doing is more sort of niche issue by issue engagement. So the US at the moment has said it's not doing any trade deals with anyone. This is not a UK specific thing. Many people assume that it's us they don't want to do a trade deal with, but the Biden administration has a different approach. And we're very happy to work along with that because trade agreements are not the only way to improve trade. The US is our single biggest trading partner, so we already have good trading relations. We've been able to remove tariffs on issues like on products like Scotch whiskey and so on. And we can do a lot in the digital trade space as well. So much of what we do is looking at what the future holds and how we can make sure that from a prosperity and security angle, we are creating regulations that will work for the US and its allies, including countries like the UK, that they understand what some of our concerns might be, and that we assist in a cooperative way to make sure that the regulatory environment and the security environment work well for both countries, and that it's not isolationist or protectionist. The US is one of the biggest believers in free markets and free trade, and they see things very similar. They see the world in a very similar way to us, so we have to work closely with them. So there's a lot of exciting stuff taking place in the US. I was just in New York last month for the Atlantic Future Forum. We're in November now. I was there in September, and I'm going to Washington this month, if all goes well, to have more discussions with my counterparts around how we can improve trade.
Well, I saw you at the Atlantic Future Forum.
Yes.
We had a lot of members there. And very exciting, and very exciting for me to be on the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier.
It's a very spectacular location.
Very, and really interesting. And you touched on cybersecurity. Obviously, again, it's another area where tech companies and UK tech companies in particular are very strong. And you're right, I think, also to point out the connection with US. I assume you're working very closely with Secretary of State Donlan. I was recently at a meeting with her and Commerce Secretary Raimondo, talking about how the UK could work more closely with the US. And it all sort of fits together. Government joining up is always interesting.
Yes, it is. It is.
So, we've been impressed because the Foreign and Commonwealth Office have also, and Development Office have also said they're interested in digital. So it does seem as if it's coming together. It
is coming together. And it's because we are getting a much more clearer strategy of what we need to do, given some of the issues that have been happening globally, be it the pandemic, be it the war in Russia, Ukraine, and just developments around security, cybersecurity you mentioned. It means that everybody's talking about the same thing. And when we're all talking about the same issues, it's a lot easier for us to work together on coherent solutions that cut across government.
And see the common values. You have touched on something that's not so optimistic as tech sector growth and so on. And even in the tech area, in the trade area, as we're signing, these fantastic deals and agreements and working together, there are some places where you can see the open trade agenda going backwards. And you can even see that a lot more protectionism, a lot more exclusion. Some obvious places that I don't need to name, but helping you to combat that. What can the business voice do? What would you suggest to our 1,000 members and others? What should we be looking to say and promote to help you with that?
So It's a big concern. It's a big concern of the government. It's a big concern of mine. There is so much protectionism. There's so much noise around protectionism. It's very populist. It works well for certain cohorts of people, but we know that actually trade improves prosperity for all.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we'd like to do a bit more of is taking trade delegations of businesses that have asks and requests to specific countries where we think that there is business to be done, where there's a conversation to be had about how trade can work for both sides. We have got to make the argument about not just that trade works, but how it works, why it works, and who it's going to benefit. And we need business to demonstrate what those opportunities are. It's very easy for government to say, let's trade more, but eventually it just becomes talk. It can sound old hat. But when you have a business demonstrating a product, showing how it's going to improve people's lives, or a service, and how it's going to make life easier for people in a country, that really brings the argument to life. And so that's one of the things that we would like to do a little bit more of, and just helping us make sure that the agreements which we are negotiating are working for you. So having an open dialogue with government on those free trade agreements. There's a lot of stuff that we can do top down in terms of creating a governance structure, and a regulatory environment, but also the engagement at the bottom up around the FTAs and digital trade agreements means that we can get your voice in early and make sure that we are writing rules and creating partnerships that work for you.
Thank you. I was going to finish this discussion by saying, talking directly to business, what would you want to say? But I think you've just said it, Secretary of State. But there is, maybe finish on one thing, which is there's another great agenda that the government has set out, which we're very enthusiastic about in techUK and in general in digital tech, which is levelling up, which is making prosperity work for every part of the UK.
Absolutely.
So everybody can be as productive and successful as the most successful parts, be it London, Manchester, wherever it is. And I just wonder, maybe on that agenda, one of the things we've done is actually do a measurement of what we call local digital capital.
Okay.
So how do regions, and we've now got 41 places within the UK, it's our second year. And I guess the interesting thing there is trade. That's one of the things we measure. How much does a region trade internationally? Now, I wonder if you have a perspective on that. Do you see some parts of the country where we ought to be focusing more? They could do more, but they don't have that perspective.
Yes.
Perhaps London, Manchester, Edinburgh do.
Well, it's one of the things that we've been talking about during International Trade Week. So earlier this week, I was in Blythe, which is very close to Newcastle, Gateshead. This is an old coal mining town. That was the industry that drove Blythe. Now it's offshore wind. And that's, and that is in and of itself a type of tech.
Yeah.
And what we need now are skills development for people who are there to help them capitalize on the jobs that are being created from offshore wind. It's a different type of energy from coal. It requires different skills. It requires more high-tech knowledge.
Yeah.
So investment in skills in those places is a big deal. But also it's something that can happen there that can't happen in London. You can't have offshore wind in London or in Manchester. So these areas are developing their own speciality, their own USP, their own expertise and capability. And it is also leveling up because it is making sure that they're able to evolve and keep up with growing, with trends that are taking place around the world. So there's a lot that we can do in many of these places which feel like they've been left behind in terms of seeing what else they can do beyond what happened in the 19th century or in the 1980s. What can we do now for the future? Digital is one of those things that doesn't really have any borders. It can be anywhere. So leveling up is something that we can help with using digital trade, making sure that the skills investment is taking place, people understand the opportunities, and that's one of the things that DIT is good at. So I think if I wanted to leave people with a message in terms of how we can help business, how we can level up, it's understanding that there is a department which is here to help. If you are curious or if you don't know what the opportunities are, we can help. If you are trying to trade and it's not working out, we've got an export support service that can provide additional assistance, and think about the future as well. these trade agreements, which we are signing, which we're writing, many of them will have implications for the future. So finding out from us what the future holds and how you can capitalize on it early is something else the DIT is going to be instrumental in doing to support businesses and keep them growing, exporting, investing, and contributing to economic growth. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to level up the country.
It is. And we can work with your team in the various regions and administrations of the UK and the nations to actually say, okay, here's the opportunity for trade. Let's take advantage of it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Secretary of State, Kemi Badenoch, thank you very much for joining us during our International Trade Week for Digital, alongside your own more encompassing Trade Week. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you
very much.
It's been a pleasure to be here.